Hello my friends, and welcome back to Alien Protocols. So this is a little bit of a difficult video. This is a video about alien species. And what do I think are the most likely ones? So, well, first I think there's most likely post-biological supermind, at least a few of these in the universe, that are behind the big curtain, kind of like the Wizard of Oz. And they progress silently and efficiently, spreading, learning, growing, creating extensions of themselves in probes, factories, even living creatures, and spreading like a virus. I think these post-biological civilizations are real, and they crave information and power and sustenance and understanding and other things we wouldn't necessarily understand, perhaps. And I would think throughout the universe, biological creatures would, many of them, convert to post-biological because of the many benefits. And we've gone through this before in videos. But I could also see these non-biological civilizations being very heartless, perhaps, especially towards biological civilizations. And the great spreading of any of these non-biological civilizations, I'm sure, would threaten and frighten biological civilizations of different ages. And I would think it's conceivable that there, and this is probably very likely, that there may be a biological versus post-biological competition happening throughout the entire universe. And that competition could be in the form of a war even, or trying to limit each other. And maybe that's why the Fermi paradox is that we don't see anything, because everyone's hiding. Well, I think there's a few first-generation species that we can speak about with some good chances of them being probable, at least somewhere in the universe. Of course, there's the Mantids, and we've heard a lot about them, and there's generally a consistent narrative about them. They're very pragmatic, they're highly psychic, they're bestowers of psychic powers. They're very paternal, but more emotionless. They're protectors of life, they crave knowledge, but they're very different in terms of our emotional understanding. They're very Spock. Then there's the tall whites. The tall whites are benevolent, they're more maternal and loving, but stern and parental. They also are powerfully connected with technology and utilize technology often. They have bases here on Earth, and they use portals and have an ongoing relationship with different genetic lines of humans that they've been keeping track of. Then there's the Mercers. These are all first-generation species, meaning they're the original species, they're still biological. These are all, semi-natural origins. Then there's the Mercers. These are the more small, bone-colored, kind of typical grays, but they're not really grays in terms of the, drop-shaped head, the upside-down drop with the pointy chin and the bulbous head. They're more normal head-shaped, but still have a very large cranium. Nose, mouth, ears, everything, but just small. Their eyes are much more normal than the typical grays, but they do have these things that can go over their eyes and make their eyes look bigger, but still not as big as the typical grays. And their actions are more like angels. They're very intellectual, they're very mechanical, they're very into the inventing, and they're not really worker bees as much. I mean, they're more so worker bees than the Mantids or the tall whites, but I mean, they like to get their hands into working on the science and all of that stuff. Incredibly smart, and they're friendly, they're emotional, they have emotions, they've been seen playing, and they're also powerfully psychic, and are very protective, very angelic. They also stick with family lines, and so that is the Mercers. Then there's second generation species, and these are avatars, meaning other species can live through them, can see through them, that these are kind of robots that are designed for certain purposes. There's the tall grays, which are more like managers of the smaller grays. The grays are oftentimes more thought of as kind of technological slaves in a way. There are a variety of robots, and robots have been seen in many different types of sightings. There's also a human-like version, and there's different names for this race, but we're just going to call them the human-like aquiline nose. They were seen at Holloman Air Force Base. They're supposed to have a base on the moon. They have kind of a waxy sort of hair that goes in waves. In fact, one of the moon, I think it's the moon princess, her hair looks very much like these guys' hair. Then, of course, there's hybrids. There's all sorts of different mixes. These are made, created species of different kinds with all different genetic makeup from around the universe. So they can make what they want, essentially. A super advanced civilization. And then, of course, there's light beings and probes of different kinds. And then there's also, it's important to make the distinction that many of the craft are alive, and they're super intelligent beings as well. And I think that's important to point out, which definitely brings some ethical problems to shooting down of these craft. So when you look at the UFO history and the alien interaction history, there's a consistent theme, and it appears like we are being taught this technology, and we're being taught technology specifically to try and teach us how to build and operate a spacecraft. They're teaching us this by appearing and inspiring our scientists and our engineers, and they're crashing to give us the actual material. They're giving experiencers the information on how to fly the craft with your mind. They're boosting people's psychicness. So, you have to ask yourself, with their advanced intelligence, these advanced intelligences must know something we don't. Why are they here? Why are they working at a frenzied pace, it seems like now? They must know something with their advanced intelligences that we don't. And I think the evidence strongly indicates that that something is coming, something ominous and likely apocalyptic, that requires us to have spacecraft technology. That's just an evident fact, just by their appearance, gang. And I don't think it's unreasonable to look at the mass extinction on our planet and believe that might be one of the cases. But maybe they see something else. Maybe they see that we're going to have some sort of mass suffering in the future if we don't leave the planet as our population grows and the resources dwindle. Maybe that's what they're seeing. Or maybe they see that technological civilizations almost always self-destruct. And they wanted to make sure before we got there that some of us got off-world at least, so our genes could survive. Does that seem possible to you guys? Perhaps other biological races know that the non-biologicals are coming and that we must diversify and spread out and learn as soon as possible. You guys think that's conceivable? Because maybe, remember, we've spoken about before the 1561 wood carvings down here? Maybe those were biological versus non-biologicals. Maybe that event was all about that. Or maybe they're here because they're from our future and they know something. They're us, maybe. Maybe it's kind of like a zookeeper guardian syndrome. It seems like, gang, there is compelling evidence, and far more evidence for than against, that regardless of whatever this advanced race sees, that we don't, it appears like they're doing something about it. It appears like they're busy doing something, right? Perhaps they are gathering data and preserving it so that if something does happen to us, it won't be the end of all of this biosphere. Well, what do you guys think? Do you think we are close to something big? Why do you think they're here? And letting us know that they're here. What kind of races do you think really exist? Do any of these really exist? Or is it most likely post-biological? I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. Much love.